You're listening to The Women in the Arena. I'm your host, Paige Rene, former collegiate athlete turned leadership entrepreneur for women just like you. Each week, I'm bringing you a new person or message to help you expand and elevate into the woman you know you're meant to be. Now, let's step into the arena. Hey, you guys, welcome back inside the Women in the Arena podcast. I'm really excited for our guest today. She is hailing all the way from New Zealand, and that's going to be very different, a really fun accent for you guys to listen to. And I'm thrilled to introduce Kathryn Sandford. She's the co-owner and director of M2M Coaching. So, Kathryn, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Paige. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited.
Tell us a little bit about M2M Coaching. Who do you work with and what do you do? Who do you serve? I'm all ears.
Yeah, well, I work with women from about 40 plus professionals, women who are, I call it, at the crossroads of disquiet, where they've reached a time in their career and lives, for whatever reason, they haven't quite made that next role or they've been missed out for promotion. They're doing quite well, but there's a feeling like there should be more. And how do I be more? And so my ideal client, and I'm just thinking of one that I'm just working with at the moment, is a woman who's just at that, has so much potential, but just can't position that in a way that creates an impact and influence and gives her what she knows she can do in her career and life. So that's my kind of sweet spot when it comes to coaching.
So there's a lot of different areas you can go in coaching. I've been there as well, and there's a lot of different niches. So how did you identify a gap and a need with this specific group of women?
Well, I was originally the co-founder and director of a recruitment, M2M Recruitment and Coaching. And in the last year or so, I decided to leave the recruitment side and move into coaching. So during the recruitment phase, I spoke to hundreds of women who were either applying for jobs or coming to interviews, or even clients who were talking about how they were facing these issues in business and how they felt in their careers. And I have a coaching background anyway, so I've done business coaching and things. So really, I ended up coaching them on how to position themselves. So it's really around personal branding, self-promotion, how to create influence and impact that really is coming from you in your place of power, rather than you trying to think, oh, this is how I should be. And I use a lot of my life experience because this is what I did. I made these mistakes. So after realizing, talking to these women, that there's a common pattern that was coming through, the message. So then I sat down and worked, and I have a learning and design background. So I worked with an instructional designer, and we started looking at, because COVID came, and so everybody was locked down. So I worked with a friend of mine, and I said, look, we've got to come up with some online program that I can coach women through. And we developed Your Brand, Your Story, which is quite a unique program where it takes you through the journey of your personal brand.
It's so hard to figure out what your personal brand is when it's like you, yourself, and your thoughts. Don't you think? I mean, I think that that's such a valuable program because you're able to be this objective perspective that is able to look at somebody and say, no, here's your gifts and here's what you offer. So you mentioned a little bit about self-promotion, and I know it's a topic that you talk about. What is the hesitation or the faux pas, if you will, when it comes to self-promotion? Like, where do women feel nervous or fearful? Or what is the feeling?
I think that we are conditioned by certain rules. I call it the self-promotion myth, which is a rule, and it's just unconscious belief. So when we're set up to speak up, that unconscious belief is triggered. And so therefore we hesitate more, or we believe what others are saying about self-promotion. And, we're talking about the comparison myth, how we compare our success. And we've been trained not to speak up. And I remember when I was, years ago, I would be too scared to ask the question because the question was so obvious that how come nobody else is asking, and everybody's nodding.
In a meeting setting? What, like, paint the picture for me. Are you in a boardroom? Are you in a meeting? Where are you
Yeah,
at?
I'm in a meeting and I'm just going, oh, I don't quite understand what you're saying. And can you explain to me? But I wouldn't, because I'd be looking around, everybody's nodding and going, yeah, and writing it down. I thought, or maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one that's got it wrong. And maybe that's a dumb question to ask. And then it wasn't until I got out of the meeting that I'd say, oh, and they went, no, I didn't understand either. And it was generally women, my female colleagues who just said, no, I wasn't going to ask that question because it'd make me look bad. So and it came into interviews. Men are much better at self-promoting, and women tended to anticipate what they think the answer should be. Trying to work out, how should I present this to make myself look good? Whereas you need to flip that around and take the power back and say, well, this is a situation where I do add value. So if you're wanting someone that can do this and deliver this result, is that important to you?
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that you learned a lot of the gap and a lot of the need for coaching through self-promotion myth and your experience specifically from being in interviews with other women where they're trying to get other jobs. And you're sitting here thinking, I've just interviewed so many different women who are having the same challenges. I think that's a really valuable space to be in. There's such good qualitative research that you can get. How do they get over the hurdle? Do you first have to realize, okay, it's uncomfortable to promote myself? Or do you first have to realize, like, oh, my question is normal? How do you break that barrier?
Well, once again, we come back to self-limiting beliefs. And this is where the course that we've designed is the first part is the self-awareness and clarity section, where we work through that self-discovery and self-awareness. Because all I believe is that those self-limiting beliefs, when they're not serving you well, they're loud, right? They're there. And that's usually in vulnerability, in a corner, threatened, feeling self-confidence is low. So you have to realize when those triggers happen, you have a choice of how you respond. And that's what the first part of that clarity section is, which is one of the pillars from my perspective of a personal brand, is that you learn how to manage those triggers and those self-limiting beliefs so that they become a lot quieter. And you recognize when they're likely to trigger, because the emotions that you're feeling are signaling to you that this is not right. So you having an understanding, and we all, in that clarity section, you go way back to your childhood, to the places where you were the most less taken by the self-limiting beliefs, and you look at the great times you had and who you wanted to be and why did you want to be that. And you go back to trying to understand the layers of experiences and the rules of society where you found yourself in a position that you just kind of at a crossroads of being lost. How do I move? Who am I? Because when you reach the age of 45, for women, we've been the daughter, the wife, the mother, the girlfriend, et cetera. And suddenly when you get to 45, maybe the kids or life's kind of sorted it. Like, what's next? And who am I? And so therefore, and also you want to make more, you're ready for more of an impact, make more influence. But it's just, how do I do that? And how do I stand in my power and be me and be okay with that?
That sounds like a ton of unlearning.
It's a ton of unlearning, but it's step by step. It's a journey. And that's what I did a post the other day about an ex-client of mine who I worked with a couple of years ago. And she came to me originally because she was in a leadership role wanting to move up, but was in a toxic senior team. And it was just, so we worked and she loved it, loved the course. And then she rang me the other day and she said, I have to apologize, but I'm in the same place. I've done it again. But she said, I've recognized it.
Here we go.
And I need you to help me to get out because I've allowed myself. And it's a great story because she knew what she was choosing to do. But one of her strengths, she's like a Pollyanna optimist. She always believes that people will be better. And when it's going well with her team and it's fabulous. But when you're on a leadership team that's toxic, it's not a good way to go. So she realized this. So she said, at least I'm not way down below the first time. So help me so I don't get back to, I don't want this to happen again. I have to go Can you work with me? In relation to that question, it's the journey, the start, and you just keep practicing and practicing. And suddenly you realize, oh, actually, like when you get to my age, you go, oh, this is okay.
You mentioned, I like how you talk. One, I have a million questions because our line of work is very similar with a different market. So this is so fascinating to me because there are similar challenges. I talk about the same thing. It's just in a different stage of life. And I sometimes try to think about a perspective shift, right? So like in my personal life, if something's going on where I'm feeling down, for example, or it's a really tough season in business, I try to think, okay, what were my concerns in high school? This is just how my brain works. And I think, okay, well, I wonder if I'm too intimidating, or I'm like second guessing myself, in certain situations. And I think, what is the advice that I would give my high school self? And typically it's take up space, be confident, go for it, say what you want to say. If you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? And so I think about those things and then I think, you know what? I probably still need that same exact advice. It's just in a different season of life. So
it's very similar advice. The difference, however, is that your priorities about what you want change. And that was a learning for me, which is one of the reasons why I left recruitment, which was very lucrative from a money perspective. It was good. I was good at it, but it wasn't where I saw myself in the next 10, 15 years. For me, I'm a grandmother. My children live overseas. My grandchildren live overseas. So my life, and I remember distinctly the time was last year because my son is married a Swedish woman, so they live in Sweden. And we were there last year and I was playing with the kids, the two girls in the playground. I thought, this is my happy space. This is really where I was really happy. And I thought, that's what I want. I know I have to work. I still want to be relevant. But I want to be working in a space where I can do this. What I'm doing in coaching is great, but where I'm really happy is over there. And that's my true north. That's my purpose. And in helping and serving others, I can do that through coaching. A win-win.
Win-win. Amen. Because then you can buy the freedom to be able to spend time with the people that you love. I want to circle back to how you described personal branding. You mentioned your program and you said that the first pillar is about clarity. If a client comes to you and is in a challenge where they are ready for what's next and they want to be in a leadership position, but they're not sure how in the environment that they're at, can you take us through maybe just a teaser or a taste of what those different pillars are that you would talk with a client to lead them from point A to point B?
Yeah. So just to give some context, I'm a teacher, right? Background is in teaching. So my approach is a very instructional but flowy way of working. So they have exercises. So the first pillar is the clarity section. So in that, it's around self-reflection. It's about asking for feedback, looking at and discovering how others see you and getting feedback from them and collating that into a kind of, oh, this is me. This is what makes me unique. This is how others see me at my best. And how do I articulate that and start to position that when I'm talking to people? And the other part is that what are some of the self-limiting beliefs that I have to work with in order to manage how I present and in order to be my full true self to others. So that's that clarity piece. And the next, there's a range of exercises they work through. The next part is the strategy. So we take that clarity and understanding of how others see it, and then we start identifying our strengths, our skill set, our values. What do we want to do? Where are we? Where do we want to go? And we kind of put that into a strategy plan. So it's our purpose, kind of values that are important. The other side of that is we work on value. How do you demonstrate them? How do I know that, for me, one of my values are open, honest, and fair. So open is when I'm fully participating. Like now, I'm fully in, boom. And if I'm not, call me out. Call me out. Honest is I can only tell myself truth. That's from my perspective, this is my truth. And fair is I can acknowledge, hear it, accept in a way that, yes, I've heard you, may not accept it in the sense of may not agree, but I've acknowledged it. So that's what we work. So we've got the values. There are only 3. I believe that you should only have 3 because you can only remember 3 and be able to talk about 3. Because then it gets to 4 and you go, what was that for? What was it? And then you work into your values, and then you have a little action plan of where you want to be. So in 2-5 years, and then there's kind of steps. So it's quite a action plan, goal orientated, but it's only on 1 page.
So what are the 3 that you just mentioned? So for you, you said honesty and open and fear. What do you call those 3?
My values of how I operate. These are my values.
Okay, so that's so interesting. I don't think of fear as a value. I think that's why I was like thrown. Tell me a little bit about how it's a value.
For me, it's a value because, we say we're non-judging, but we all judge, right? I'm non-judge. Oh, yeah. We all judge. Right? It's like, but what I wanted to say, for me, I chose that because it's about, I hear you. I may not agree with you. And when I hear you, I'll tell you my self-truth in the sense of this is just coming from me, but I've heard you. And I think that's the acknowledgement side of it. And so for me, that was the value I chose. That's pretty. And that's the 3 values I operate on. And as I say, pull me up if I'm not. Just like...
You guys, when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I had very few examples of women in leadership positions. And sometimes when I shared what I was building with my friends or with my coworkers at the time, they just didn't really get it. Even when I wanted to create some new goals and talk about those ambitions, I didn't feel like I had a community of women to share that with, which is why I found an online community of other multi-passionate, like-minded women. If you can relate, join us in our Rise Facebook community where you get free weekly coaching, a network of amazing women who are also in the arena, and you're the first to know about the latest offers. Women leaders rise together. See you inside our Rise Facebook community. You can find the link in the show notes. So how do you know when you know your 3 values? So let's say you're working with a client. They've uncovered their 3 values in a way that you have. How do they know how to use those? Do you have an example from a client that you've worked with? I ask those specific questions because my goal is for somebody listening to be able to say, okay, A, I need to find Kathryn Sandford and work with her. And or B, okay, if I had to pick 3 values, how do I pick those 3? And then how do I use those?
Okay, so that work, how you do that comes from that first piece, the clarity section, because what you're working through is you go way back to your childhood about what you loved, when were you best, what were your dreams, what did you dream about becoming, why did you dream that, for one of my clients, wanted to be a flight attendant, right? She got the uniform, she was only 8 or 9, but that was her dream. And I said, well, what was it about that? Why did you want to be a flight attendant? And it ended up, that was where her love of people and service to others. And that's where that sort of came, that to her. And it was like, oh my God, that still exists today.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. I'm sitting here listening to you thinking, well, my dream job was to be an actress. And I already knew that from a young age. And then I never considered why, but it does come full circle to wanting to create a really great experience for people. And so I think that's really cool. Okay, so values. And then what do you do with that? Like when you uncover that about yourself, what do you do with it?
Well, then you start looking at how do I action or position that and what makes me unique. And so it's working around looking at those activities that you're doing in your career that you really know that that's where you play best. And one of my clients, she has a story where she, even as she was an identical twin, and she was tidy and her twin was messy. And so when she got her own room, she organized her closet into the same colored hangers, and each was that distance apart, right? That was when she was, I think, a teenager. And she was telling this story, and I was like, so that's what you do. You look at chaos and you organize it. And she was like, and that's really important. And that's when you're in your best, is delivering value by working with organizations when they're feeling like, oh my God, what's happening? You come in and go, ha, This is my sweet spot. To me, this is important because it all comes down to how do you add value to what you're doing, and how she adds value is based from that service value of helping getting things moved along, structuring it, making sure it's all. And when she realized that, she goes, "Oh my God, that was way back." I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh."
Yeah, that makes so much sense when you talk about the unlearning and getting to, let's say, the 40 to 45 age range that you're talking about with women who have played these roles and served in these roles for so long. You almost do have to go back to the beginning and look at, okay, well, where is it hidden? Sometimes when I work with clients, I say that there's a sculpture underneath and we're just kind of chipping away and slowly getting down to it. And I imagine that it's because they still want more for their career, like you said. So you talk about future-proofing your career. So helping women future-proof their careers. What does that mean and how do you help them?
Well, I have a saying that from a professional perspective in your professional life, a CV gets you to the front door. Your personal brand opens the door and takes you into the future. So if you want to be, and looking ahead at your life, if you want to be relevant, visible, who says you can't be at 60, 70 and 80? And it's like being fit, right? If you want to be mobile, fit, 60, 70, 80, you have to start now. Well, it's the same with your career, right? And it's not putting it into a box and going, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. But the uniqueness of who you are and moving with the world of work and how it changes is totally in your control, and how you use that to be relevant, to make a difference, to still have impact, has to start at some point. And this is when probably is the best point to start. So you start looking at, how do I want to live my life? Because I'm not a work-life balance person. I'm a life first, right? This work-life balance. That's why so many of us get confused, because it doesn't align to what's really true to ourselves. That work comes before life. No, it doesn't. Life comes first and then work. So in that context, that's a kind of future proofing. It's around working out ahead, looking ahead and saying, well, how do I want to live my life at 60, or 50, 60, 70? What do I want to be in life? And then just start. This is how you future proof it, is by figuring out who you are and what brings you and makes you unique in this world of sameness. Everybody's the same. And this is the thing that I found in interview. You get this, just the same all the time, the same questions, the same responses. And now that, the recession and unemployment, you wouldn't believe how many of the same. I did a job recently for a client, not that I was wanting to do it. I did it because I liked it. I thought, okay, I'll do it for you. I got something like 297 applicants, and all of those, none of them got the job. The person who got the job, which is in my third part, was on LinkedIn.
How did they stand out? Was it how they positioned themselves?
Their profile, which is in the third part of that's the implementation phase, is the third part.
Very cool. So you get the action steps.
Yeah. And my client was like, luckily I know him very well. He said, surely to goodness, there must be someone in that 209. And there may have been, but they were hidden, right? They were hidden behind the sameness, nothing stood out. The cover letter was ChatGPT, copy and paste. I was like, I love ChatGPT, but you put your own self into it. It's an enabler to make things more efficient. But don't put in a cover letter. Well, add the job description, say, write me a cover letter. Just like, why?
I use ChatGPT as well. And I think that's why it gets such a bad rep, is you have to really train it in your voice, and you can't just take what it says. It's like, it is almost like I'm making this, I realize I forget I'm on camera and I'm obviously very expressive. So I'm making this face, as you say, that everybody's having the same response. And I'm just like, because I've been fighting with ChatGPT sometimes when it spits out some very cookie cutter thing. And I'm like, no, like, use my voice or do something else that's off the wall or funny.
Exactly. I said the other, you know me by now. What is it? Come on. It's like, oh, sorry.
Okay. So I understand, though, that people that are applying for a position are trying to fit the mold of being in that position or what that position is asking for. So I understand where the similar responses come from. And maybe they're playing the comparison game, like, oh, if I was more like this, or I had this background or this background. So you work with comparison as well, or that's a topic that you work through with clients. What do you hear when it comes to comparison with the niche that you work with?
Well, I have to fit in the box. I have to, because everybody else is. And when I look at people, they fit in the box and they're successful.
I just need to tell you, I needed to hear that right here, right now. I needed to hear that. Can you please repeat that?
Well, and I know this because my backstory is I got fired 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I was like, what? And my kids were saying, Mum, this is unusual, because none of our parents. And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And I bring a unique set of talent that operates in a unique environment. The environment that I was going into was fitting in the box. Not that I couldn't do the job. I could. The environment was not suited to my unique talent that I could bring to the role, right? So it was micromanaged, it was tight, the money was great. And I think, oh, well, if I can do that, because everybody else, that's something, because if people are telling me, oh, well, Kathryn, you're out of the box, you need to get back in the box to be success. Because if you stay out of the box, and having a teaching background, I was great in the classroom and I had my own kingdom because I could get these kids. I'd say, look, you follow me, I'll get you there. I used to say, you hop on my vehicle of success, I'll get you there. You got 3 chances and you're off. In those days, it was a long time ago, you could do that, right? And they got them. My exam pass rates were the highest they'd ever been, because I was teaching the scholarship students who knew far more than me. But they listened to what I knew because I knew how to pass. I knew what was so. But when you get into the world of corporate, you have to fit the box, right?
It's like that saying, if you're a fish trying to climb a tree, you're wrong talent, wrong environment. And that's so hard to take a step back, because you take things personally, because you put your heart and soul in your work. And then you think, okay, well, there must be something wrong with me. So what's your advice to somebody listening to this that's like, okay, well, I am trying to fit in the box because I am trying to get into this position, but things aren't working. What do? I don't want to compare myself left and right.
We've been conditioned to put up with mediocre, right? For us as women, we've been conditioned that it will get better, that it will be okay. Surely it can't be that bad. If I manage it, it will be fine. But it doesn't. It slowly builds up, and that's when stress, and that's when the whole thing, if we're not true to ourselves, and our emotions will be telling us, and I know this because the second time it happened, my intuition, and this is where we work on the clarity section, is getting into your intuition and learning how to feed it the right information. Well, I was feeding it wrong because it was telling me. I remember the second job I went for, the first day I walked up the stairs and I went to reception and I said, I need to go to the bathroom. I went into the bathroom. We went, what the have you done? What have you done? But, it can't be that bad. It can't be. And they weren't bad people. Honestly, it wasn't. But it was like, I knew, but I kept going. Until I got to the point where it's like, you got to go. It was like, from getting back to your question, you've got to work out how to get out. And I'm not saying jump, but I think strategically. And when you have sat down and worked out what you need to do to leave, then there's that light. And I think you start to manage the toxic situation because you know that you are taking steps to leave. You've made that decision. You're getting that support. And so you start to cope with, it becomes more, you can cope with it more because you know that you've got a plan. But when you've got no plan,
Well, okay, that's where it brings me to another question. So I remember being in this exact position before I went full-time in business. I was in sports operations, and I had done that for 7 seasons, 7 years through my 20s. And I wanted to launch my business. Now, I knew what avenue I wanted to launch my business in, but let's say that I'm a woman who's been doing the same position for a while, and I have an entrepreneurial spirit, or I want to do something or make a shift in my career where it allows me a little bit more of that life that you're talking about and not just being married to this job. How do I narrow down how my skills translate when there's so many different fields?
Well, I think you go back to the basics because that's way over there. I think you need to come down, and when you say, and it's getting clarity, because what we tell ourselves as you know, you just said, I have an entrepreneurial spirit. So when I hear that, my understanding could be very different to you. So you actually have to work on, what does an entrepreneurial spirit mean to me? What are the things that I'm looking for in regard to being an entrepreneur that gives, and it could be that it's not what you think it is, because you may be conditioned by the context of what we get fed about entrepreneurs. So it's working out that kind of, the language we use, we have to be very careful. Because when you say, I want to grow, I want personal growth, what I see here could be very different to what you mean.
Right.
So we have to sit down and go, what does that mean? When you say you have an entrepreneurial spirit, what is that to you? And what would that look like if you decided to put it into a business or an idea? Or for some, like I've had a couple of women come to me who have gone on their own journey of being a life coach. But when they came, they wanted to be a performance consultant. I was like, well, and I have a superpower because I can see potential. I already see it. So I was like, oh, no, you don't want, but I have to let them on the journey of discovering that. But, you know, she's now a life coach and loves it. And she uses her performance stuff as part of her coaching, but it's the actual, that's what she was there. And that for her was where she wanted to serve. And I always come back to, how do you serve others? Because how you present to the world is how you best serve to the world. If your service to others is the value that you add or bring, that's the part of your reputation. Because your personal brand is your reputation. So when, you know, Jeff Bezos says, when you leave the room, what do people say about you? Well, it's true. What do you want? The only control you have is that.
That's so interesting you bring that up. I have my clients usually in the beginning of the time we work together is I ask them to text 2 colleagues, 2 friends, 2 family members, and just ask them what 3 words they think of when they think of them. And then we start with, okay, what 4 words out of all those patterns do you want to embody? Like, what do you want people to say about you? And I do teach it the same as what you're saying. It's your reputation and how do you position yourself for advancement. And I find, like, with women in the executive world, they want to put their nose down. They want to do a good job at their job. And there's also this second part that's missing a little bit is, okay, we want to do a good job at our job, but we also want to position ourselves with the people in the company that are decision makers, or with opportunities that we can say yes to that make long-term strategic decisions for, instead of being in your position, now being in an elevated position where you're leading other women or other team members. That can be a tough transition for anybody.
Yeah, I think it is. And men have the same issue, more so women. Men, it's interesting though, because I work with women, right? But the universe, I'm a great believer, has sent me, I've got probably about 5 male clients, senior exec clients, where their wives or friends have recommended they come to me. And it's different, but the same. Because they would say, like, oh, I just need my CV done and my LinkedIn profile done, and just tell me how to do interviews. Okay, no.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, you know, you go back to that point about like men applying for jobs versus women applying for jobs. You bring up the same point. It's like men can look at your marketing all day and it can be about women, but they can be like, hey, I want to hire you. I've had this happen. I explain that I work with men, but my marketing doesn't cater to men, but they are the ones that are still like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Whereas I think you have to just talk even more clearly to the woman so she feels like, oh, this is exactly for me. You find that in your marketing too?
Yeah, it's true. It's a different, yeah. And the guy, one of my clients said, do I have to hug trees? It sounds like I have to hug a tree. I thought, hey, if it works for you, go hug a tree. I don't.
Whatever you want.
Whatever. I'm not telling you. I mean, whatever. And he goes, oh, it just feels like I have to go hug a tree. I thought, hey, go hug a tree.
It sounds like everything you offer is so valuable and packed with so much experience from your work, from your own life and the work that you've done on yourself to the clients that you work with. What is the program, or where can people find you, and what is the program that you recommend now for somebody getting started with this work?
I have a personal brand cohort group where I have a group of women, and that's only very small. I push it to 10, no more than 10, and we work, and that's a 6-week program where we work through the personal brand course, the online program, and then we have weekly coaching sessions. That is meant can be very powerful for women because we're in the same group. And I had the session just finished last week and we all cried. It's just like, it's powerful stuff. And honestly, even me, it's just like, whoa, this is amazing. When you're in it with these women, you're just like, oh my God, you're amazing. And that's kind of I like that one because it's the most transformative, the group collective, and it's so inclusive and safe.
And what is it called again?
It's called the Personal Brand Cohort Group.
Okay, Personal Brand Cohort Group. And where do you hang out online the most? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, get me on LinkedIn. That's my website's going through a change at the moment because I'm transitioning over to coaching only. So I'm moving. So that's another thing. You know how you make decisions, big life decisions, but you think, oh, it can't be that bad.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll jump in and then I'll figure it out.
And you get in and you go, luckily I have my lifesaver, Anya, who helps me, gives me the structure. And then my son who's in IT. And he does websites. So thankfully, but still, LinkedIn is the best place to message me. I have one-on-one programs, which are more in depth and they're more, I call it the Elevate, which is around if you're wanting to look for your next career move, you're wanting to go into that senior level position, you want a seat at the table and you need to position yourself and create a strategy on how you best do that. You'd go through the core program, but there's more one-on-one kind of coaching from me. So we might do a range of things around interview skills. We look at your LinkedIn profile. How do you be visible on LinkedIn? What does that mean? What's your LinkedIn strategy? Because LinkedIn can be so I just I call it stay in your lane LinkedIn strategy.
Well, we'll surely link your LinkedIn in the show notes so that people can find you. And I have a final question for you that I ask everybody who comes on the Women in the Arena. And it's, what does it mean to you, Kathryn, to be a woman in the arena? What is your definition?
To celebrate being female, being a woman in power, and to be inclusive and part of that. I think that's where we are enabled to be our true selves, where we're in a group of women who share the same, and the energy is just amazing. So for me, being a woman in an arena is more about the celebration of being woman and power of woman.
Oof, love that. That's awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. Thank you for your time, and I will talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
I hope today's episode inspired you on your journey in the arena. Make sure to check out the show notes in the description for a rundown of today's show with all the important links. If you enjoyed this, please share with a friend. I know how much it means to me when my friends share podcasts. Leave us a review and let us know what landed with you over on Instagram at Paige_Rene15. As always, your best bet is on yourself.